60 years, 25 Grammy Awards, the most ever won by a solo artist. 30 US top 10 hits. A scar on his forehead he deliberately kept because he wanted a reminder that he was still here. A kidney transplant at 69 that he announced mid-concert in London because he felt the audience deserved to know. And a federal holiday that exists in America today, a day that honors the most important civil rights leader of the 20th century. Because a blind man from Detroit spent 3 years testifying before Congress, leading marches on the National Mall, and writing a song that became the most effective piece of political music in modern American history. Most people think they know the story of Stevie Wonder, the child prodigy, the synthesizer revolution, the classic period that Paul Simon once acknowledged mid-Grammy speech by thanking Stevie Wonder for not making an album that year, as if the only competition that mattered was the one with him. The smile that has never once appeared to be performance. What most people do not know is what the smile was built on top of, what it replaced, what it was formed over, the way scar tissue forms, not instead of the wound, but because of it. And in the exact same shape, Stevland Hardaway Judkins is born 6 weeks early in Saginaw, Michigan, on May 13, 1950. His mother, Lula Mae Hardaway, is 22 years old. His father, Calvin Judkins, is 30 years older than she is, and has been, by her account and by every account that followed hers, a man whose cruelty is not ambiguous. He drinks, he abuses her. He eventually, according to what Lula herself wrote in her 2002 memoir, forces her into prostitution under threat of violence. This is the home the baby is born into. 6 weeks early, lungs not yet ready for the world, placed immediately into an incubator where the oxygen levels are too high. The excess oxygen destroys the blood vessels at the back of his eyes. Retinopathy of prematurity, the doctors call it. His retinas detach. By the time he leaves the hospital, the baby who came into the world early and into difficulty is also blind. His mother will spend years believing this is her fault. She will take him to faith healers. She will cry. For years, in front of him and around him, until one day the boy who is 5 years old tells her, "Don't worry about me being blind, because I'm happy." He will explain this to Oprah Winfrey decades later with the precision of a man who has had time to understand what he was doing. "It bothered me that my mother was crying all the time," he says. "She thought God might be punishing her for something." He is 5 years old, and he is trying to protect his mother from her own grief about him. When he is 4, she takes him and leaves. She moves to Detroit. She changes her name back to Lula Hardaway. She changes his last name to Morris. She takes whatever jobs she can, factory work, domestic service, and raises her children in a household that is poor and frequently cold and absolutely full of music. There is a radio. He keeps it close to his ear. He listens to Ray Charles and Sam Cooke and whatever else the signal carries. He bangs rhythms on every surface he can find. He teaches himself to play harmonica at 5, piano at 6, drums at 8, not because someone told him to, because the sound is the only room in the world that has no locked doors. In 1961, 11 years old, he sings an original composition called Lonely Boy for Ronnie White of the Miracles. White takes him and his mother to Motown the next day. Berry Gordy hears him and signs him on the spot. The name the label gives him, Little Stevie Wonder, is chosen specifically to evoke the Carnival Barker energy of a sideshow, to frame his blindness and his talent as the spectacle. Step right up. A 12-year-old genius, born blind. Play him anything. The contract his mother signs gives Motown control of everything. His royalties are placed in a trust fund he cannot access until he turns 21. His weekly allowance is $2.50. He is paid 2% of retail price on recordings sold, which means that when Fingertips goes to #1 in 1963, making him the youngest solo artist ever to top the Billboard Hot 100, he receives a few cents per copy of what becomes one of the biggest-selling records of that year. Motown, meanwhile, earns $30 million from Stevie Wonder before he is old enough to vote. He does not complain. He is 12 years old and he is at Hitsville, USA, learning from Marvin Gaye and Smokey Robinson and the greatest session musicians of the era. He absorbs everything: how to arrange, how to produce, how to make the sound in his head match the sound coming out of the speakers. He is a prankster. He learns everyone's intercom number and calls them impersonating Berry Gordy. He goes on the Motown Review and performs 20-minute sets that stop the room cold. A blind kid from Detroit who plays 5 instruments and sings with a voice that seems to arrive from somewhere deeper than the body it comes out of. But the work never quite belongs to him. The sound they let him make is the sound they decide on. The arrangements are theirs. The producers are theirs. The Stevie Wonder sound is an assembly line product made in a building named Hitsville, and he is its most profitable component. And he knows it, and he waits. On May 13, 1971, Stevie Wonder turns 21. Berry Gordy throws him a birthday party at his Boston Boulevard mansion. The next morning, Wonder's lawyer sends a letter terminating all of his Motown contracts. He takes control of the trust fund, $1 million, less than 4% of what some estimates say he earned for the label. He leaves Detroit for New York. He goes to Electric Lady, the studio Jimi Hendrix built, and locks himself inside with a synthesizer and a year's worth of ideas he has been accumulating since he first understood what he was capable of and what he was not being allowed to do. I just kept repeating the Stevie Wonder sound, he will say later, and it didn't express how I felt about what was happening in the world. He plays every instrument himself. He produces every track. He records until he has enough leverage to go back to Gordy and negotiate a contract that has never existed before at Motown and will barely exist again anywhere. Full creative control, ownership of his masters, his own publishing company, a royalty rate 7 times what he started on. He is 21 years old, and he has just engineered one of the most significant artist power moves in the history of the music industry. Then he goes back into the studio and makes Music of My Mind. 3 days after Innervisions is released in August 1973, Stevie Wonder is in the front seat of a rental car on Interstate 85 in North Carolina, heading to a benefit concert for a black radio station in Durham. He is asleep when a log breaks loose from the flatbed truck ahead of them and crashes through the windshield. It hits him in the forehead. His skull fractures. His brain is contused. He is rushed to North Carolina Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem. His head swells to 5 times its normal size. Papers begin reporting that he is dead. His friend and tour director, Ira Tucker, enters the hospital room and finds him unresponsive, and thinks about what Stevie likes, and gets down close to his ear and begins to sing Higher Ground, the Stevie Wonder song that was still on the charts from the album that had just been released, as loudly as he can. After a moment, Stevie Wonder's fingers begin to move in time with the keyboard parts. He is in a coma for 4 days. When he comes out of it, he asks the plastic surgeon, who comes to close the gash on his forehead, to leave it. He wants the scar to stay. He wants a reminder. When he returns to the stage months later at Madison Square Garden, he points to the scar on his forehead and looks up at the sky and thanks God that he is alive. The crowd, which loves him, is on its feet before he finishes the sentence. He had written Higher Ground before the accident, but he said afterwards that something must have been telling me something was going to happen, that this is like my second chance for life, to do something or to do more, and to value the fact that I am alive. He goes back into the studio and makes Fulfillingness first finale. Then Songs in the Key of Life, which becomes the first album by an American artist to debut at #1 on the Billboard chart and wins Album of the Year, giving him 3 consecutive Grammy wins for Album of the Year, the only artist in history to do that. Kanye West will say in 2005 that his ambition is not to compete with what's out there now, but with Innervisions and Songs in the Key of Life. It sounds musically blasphemous, West says, but why not set that as your bar? In 1968, when Stevie Wonder is 17 years old, Martin Luther King Jr. is shot dead in Memphis while standing on a balcony at the Lorraine Motel. Wonder had heard him on the radio when he was 5. He had met him in person at 16 at a rally in Chicago. He is 4 days away from his 18th birthday when his hero is killed, and the grief he feels is not the ordinary grief of a fan losing an icon. It is personal in the specific way that grief is personal when the person you are mourning was fighting for your right to exist in full. He waits 12 years. He writes a song. In 1980, Happy Birthday is released on the Hotter Than July album. It is not a birthday song. It is a political document dressed as a celebration. He includes a large photograph of King on the album sleeve and a written message urging everyone who buys the record to support the legislation that would make King's birthday a national holiday. Then he starts working. He testifies before Congress. He leads a rally of more than 15,000 people on the National Mall on January 15, 1981, the site where King gave I Have a Dream 18 years earlier, and he sings Happy Birthday and We Shall Overcome, and the crowd sings back to him and keeps singing after he finishes. He backs more rallies in 1982 and 1983. He stands beside Coretta Scott King at press conferences and at congressional hearings, and in rooms where the people who do not want this holiday to exist are forced to sit across from a blind man who keeps showing up with songs and crowds and an inexhaustible belief that imagination, I saw it, I imagined it, I wrote about it because I saw it, is enough. On November 2, 1983, Ronald Reagan signs the bill creating Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Stevie Wonder is standing in the room. There is a scar on his forehead. He is 33 years old, and he has been blind since he was an infant, and he has just helped build the first federal holiday in American history, honoring a Black American. You can always go back to imagination, he will say later. You can always go back to what you believe is possible and work from there. In 2019, at a concert in London, he stops between songs and tells the audience that he will be having a kidney transplant in September. He tells them this is the reason his touring schedule has been limited. He tells them his kidney donor has already been identified. He thanks them for their support. He does it mid-show with the same matter-of-fact warmth with which he does everything. The same quality that made a 5-year-old tell his crying mother not to worry, that made a 12-year-old ask for $250 a week and become the most profitable act in Motown history, that made a 23-year-old keep the scar on his forehead as a reminder that second chances are real and should not be wasted. He has the transplant. He recovers. He continues. On May 13, 2024, his 74th birthday, the President of Ghana grants him citizenship. It is an honor he has long sought, part of a larger commitment to African heritage that has shaped the last chapter of his life. He is, at this point in his story, a man who has outlasted almost every system that tried to manage or diminish him. The incubator that took his sight, the father who made his early years dangerous, the record label that held his earnings until he was old enough to take them back, the log that came through a windshield in North Carolina, the kidney disease that quietly announced itself until it could no longer be ignored. He has outlasted all of it and kept making music and kept showing up at every moment when the world needed someone with a voice and a certainty and a scar on his forehead to point at the sky and say, I know something better is possible because I imagined it and I worked until it was true. What Stevie Wonder endured does not change the music. The music is already everything it is. The synthesizers, the melodies, the words that go places language usually can't reach. What it changes is the ground beneath the music, the understanding of what all of it was built on. Not inspiration, not talent that arrived fully formed as a gift, but a specific, irreducible refusal to let what has been done to you become the definition of what you are. He was born early, into difficulty, into darkness, literal and otherwise. He converted every single part of that into light and then gave the light away, repeatedly, without keeping a ledger. He asked for a scar instead of a closure. He asked for a holiday instead of comfort. He asked for creative control instead of a bigger allowance. What he endured will change how you see him. But more than that, if you let it, it might change how you see yourself. The question is what you would do with a second chance if you had already decided at 5 years old to stop worrying and be happy. Subscribe for more untold stories of the legends who shaped our world.